Hello, a very good morning to all of you. We are gathered here today for the webinar on online teaching and learning from the COVID-19 experience, which is jointly organized by the Staff Development Center and the International Relations Office of the University of Peradeniya. The objective of today's program is to look into the new ways of learning and teaching after the COVID-19 pandemic in a university setting. Without much ado, I would now like to invite Professor Chalinda Benaragama, the Director of the Staff Development Center of the University of Peradeniya, to make the opening remarks for this program. Over to you, sir.
Very good morning to all of you. It's really an honor and privilege for me to be here today to welcome all of you officially on behalf of the Staff Development Center and the International Relations Office of University of Peradeniya. And I must welcome our special guest for today, Dr. Tony Bates as well. He's online despite his late night time at Vancouver. Welcome you, sir. Thank you very much for being here with us today. It's a great honor to welcome you to our program. Actually, this is a timely requirement in Sri Lanka because we were not ready for this digital or digitized teaching learning experience. We were basically going through the traditional type of teaching learning experiences basically on ground, of course, with a lot of student-centered teaching learning methods. But with this COVID-19 pandemic situation, as for everybody in the whole world, we also started thinking about this online teaching learning experience. So once again, welcoming all of you to this webinar on online teaching and learning from the COVID-19 experiences, which is going to be an experience sharing session. Not only from Sri Lanka, but also from the Canada. And of course, Dr. Tony Bates has a lot of experiences from around the world. So my task is to set the stage for today's discussion. So what I'm going to talk about is basically enhancing digital literacy in students through digitized teaching learning experience. The 21st century skills, which is something that everybody is talking about these days. Earlier, people were talking about soft skills, but now everyone is talking about 21st century skills. So this group of skills, this cohort of skills comprise of learning skills, literary skills, and life skills, where the literacy skills play a huge role these days when it comes to digital teaching and learning, which includes information, and the media, and of course, the technology. So with this, people have started talking about the 21st century learner. 21st century learner should be different. This is what everybody is talking about. Everyone is telling in the teaching learning arena. So within this 21st century learner, digital literacy is one of the most important aspects that we all need to inculcate in the students. So when you think of this digital literacy, I'm sure this is the best time for all of us to talk about in detail, thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic. Because with the COVID-19 pandemic going everywhere in the world, we had to maintain social distancing. And a lot of countries, a lot of areas in the world experienced a lot of the lockdown conditions. Even in Sri Lanka, we experienced this for the first time. In my case, it's the first time in my life. And then we had to stop the classroom teaching. And the only option or the only alternative was going for e-learning and virtual teaching and so on. So we did not realize the enormous benefits of this teaching learning environment, which really supported by the online teaching methodologies until the COVID-19 pandemic. So we started thinking about online teaching and online learning. Even it was a new experience for our students. So I strongly believe this is a blessing in disguise. It's true, it was a very bad experience for the whole world, but we learned a good lesson through this, especially when it comes to teaching and learning. And as we all understand, there are so many benefits of online teaching and learning. Something like we can increase the flexibility of time and of course increased flexibility of location. The students can learn from wherever they are, and administrative efficiencies can be enhanced a lot. And most importantly, we can give the access to all, irrespective of the students' geographical location, their ethnic background, or whatever it is, we can give the access to all. And it's a very nice information sharing experience, and a wealth of online resources are also there. And for all of us, for the students and for the teachers, it's a very nice, diverse and enriching experience. Then people started talking about blended learning, and this came into picture all of a sudden, particularly in countries like Sri Lanka, which we were not into this at the very beginning. I'm sure a lot of discussions will come into the picture today with in relation to this blended learning and the flipped classrooms as well. Now the whole country is talking about this blended learning and flipped classrooms and trying to incorporate into their curricula. I'm sure for all the teachers, this is not new. Or the university academia, this is not new. The Bloom's taxonomy for the cognitive domain or for the knowledge domain. And we knew only this up to the level where we experienced the COVID-19 pandemic situation. But with this, now the Bloom's digital taxonomy is also made available by great scientists around the world, great educationists around the world. So this shows us the world is moving so fast, and the world is catching up the threats that the threats that the pandemic situations like COVID-19 pose on the teaching learning environment. So why don't we take this as well? Not only that, going one more step further, thanks to this Dr. Alan Carrington, he has come up with a very nice Bloom's digital type of a taxonomy to show that the apps available for each and every level in the cognitive domain to support the cognitive domain according to the Bloom's taxonomy. So this also shows how far the world has gone. So all these experiences are important for us to improve our digital or digitized teaching learning experience. And with our experience in University of Peradeniya here in Sri Lanka, we actually a group of scientists, a group of academia from University of Peradeniya, we got together and we offered several training programs for our own academia. And with our experience during this 1 year time, we have come up with a model called SESE model for online teaching and learning. And we have already written a paper and submitted for review. Now it's under review. So these are some of the things that we can share from University of Peradeniya's side. And I'm sure there are many, many other things, other experiences also that we can learn from different areas. Surely, Dr. Bates' discussion today will give us a lot of insights into this online teaching and learning. So with this very brief setting the stage, let me now wind up my welcome speech or the opening remarks, once again highlighting this 21st century learner, where the digital literacy is one of the most important criteria in empowering the 21st century learner. So this is one of the best opportunities for all of us. Even after this, even after the pandemic situation is over, I'm sure as academics in the world or in Sri Lanka, it's our responsibility to take this forward, at least one step ahead, to cater to this dire need of the students. With that, Let me thank for the opportunity given, and let me wind up my opening remarks. Thank you very much.
So thank you so much, Professor Chalinda. It was a very nice presentation and very nice opening remarks that you made. So just a little reminder to all our participants today. So if you have any questions, you are more than welcome to post them in the Q&A section, and we'll be happy to take them later after the program. So next in our agenda, the presentation by Dr. Tony Bates. So he is the senior advisor from the J. Raymond Chang School of Continuing Education, Ryerson University, Canada. So before we start the presentation, it's a recorded presentation. I would like to invite Dr. Tony Bates to make a few words on this program today and about your thoughts on the topic. Over to you, Dr. Bates. You're muted, sir. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be able to talk to you from Vancouver. We're all facing very difficult challenges at the moment. I don't think anybody has the perfect solution to the situation we're in these days. I see that the comment was made that COVID-19 was a blessing in disguise. I think that's only true if you didn't catch COVID. But yes, it certainly taught us a lot of lessons, and the presentation that you're going to see tries to look at some of the lessons we've learned as a result of COVID-19 in terms of digital learning.
So thank you so much, Dr. Bates. So with that, we'll next move to the presentation. So I will share my screen now.
Hello, this is one of a series of keynotes on online and blended learning that I've prepared in collaboration with the Commonwealth of Learning, and I'd like to thank them for their help with this. Today I want to talk about 10 lessons for online learning from the COVID-19 experience. And these are based on research findings on how instructors, students and administrators responded to the pivot in the spring of 2020. And I'm hoping that by the time you see this, COVID-19 will have gone and we won't have to worry about it anymore. But I still think we will have learned some useful lessons from it as far as online learning is concerned. So I'm going to talk about, very briefly, the sources of the research and the limitations of the research. I'm going to go through the 10 lessons that I see that we've learned during the spring and summer, and to some extent the fall of 2020, and then I'll come to some conclusions. This is based on 14 quick and dirty surveys between March and November 2020. They're called quick and dirty because they have severe limitations. They're not what you might call academic research. They're small, based on small convenient samples. For instance, asking readers of journals to fill in a questionnaire, for instance, or members of a group to fill in questionnaires. And it covers mainly the United States and Canada, so I'm not sure how well this will apply outside. And in most cases, because the numbers are small, it's opinions rather than facts, although the opinions may be quantified. So many people thought this, but it's still opinions rather than facts. By facts, I mean we don't have evidence necessarily of student learning outcomes as a result. Nevertheless, I found that taken overall, these reports are useful, and the findings are, surprisingly, given the variety of sources, are fairly consistent in what they come up with. So overall, there were some very good responses in the higher education post-secondary system in North America to the COVID-19 pandemic. There was a lot of resilience showed by most universities and colleges. All higher education institutions in North America within 2 weeks moved to emergency remote learning. That is a fantastic effort. In Canada, that meant 100,000 instructors moved their stuff online in 2 weeks. There were no strikes, there were no walkouts, and to be honest, the technology worked reasonably well. There wasn't huge crashes of servers and so on. So in terms of an emergency response, it worked very well. Also, over the summer, there was a big effort to improve the quality of the online offering by training faculty, not just in the use of the tools, but also how to use the tools better for learning purposes. And this enabled both the spring, summer and fall semesters to be saved for students. Students were able to complete them. And we will see from the results that there were considerable improvements in the online offering in the fall semester compared with the spring semester. So it was a pretty good effort by everybody. And given the circumstances, I think higher education institutions, instructors and students should be proud of what they were able to do. However, there are lots of things that weren't so good. Certainly in the spring, it was mainly online lectures. Best online practices often were ignored and students were unhappy. They're unhappy, interestingly, we'll see a little later, not so much about the learning, but about all the other things they missed from going to university or college. And in particular, the K-12, the school sector, is still struggling as I speak in December, partly because of confused policy and messaging, surprisingly little help for teachers, school teachers, in moving online, and as a result, poor online pedagogy, not using online in the best way. So I think there's a big difference between the higher education post-secondary sector and the school sector here. And we could look at some of the reasons for that a little later. So the first lesson, there was a rapid increase in online and blended learning. I think there will be a rapid increase in online and blended learning post-pandemic. Prior to COVID-19, faculty resistance was the main barrier to online learning. We knew that from national surveys, that many faculty were resistant to teaching online. As a result of COVID-19, nearly all faculty now has some experience. And of course, there's been a mixed reaction. Some instructors took to it like ducks to water, others hated it, and others weren't altogether happy, but were able to manage and actually learn something as a result. Many faculty received training in online learning over the summer, so their appreciation of its strengths and weaknesses is better. Students were using internet anyway before COVID-19, and now I think instructors are more aware of the potential that, of getting students to use the internet can be for their teaching. So I suspect that many will incorporate online learning into their face-to-face and classroom teaching when we go back to whatever normal will be afterwards. Here's a kind of conceptual graph. This is based on Canadian data. Up to about 2020, online enrolments were increasing at about a rate of about 10% per annum. And around about 2018, 10% of all credit course enrolments were fully online, in fully online courses. So it was a significant but small number of courses were fully online by 2020. Now, I think there will be an increase after 2020 because particularly in areas like professional master's programs, for instance, or maybe some of the later courses in an undergraduate program, faculty and instructors will see a benefit in having some more courses fully online. But I think there's a market limit to how far fully online will go in the future. It mainly appeals to more independent learners, older learners, learners in the workforce, learners who I would call lifelong learners, and so on. It appeals to single mothers, for instance, who can't go out to work but need to be at home to look after their children. And so there is a definite market which is still not fully exploited. And I think because demographically, student numbers are likely to drop as a result of the age differences and so on, that numbers coming out of high school are going to go down slightly, certainly in Canada. There will be a push for these lifelong learners to fill the gap, and also for international students. The big change, I think, is going to come with blended and hybrid. We didn't really know how many courses were hybrid before 2020. We knew about a third of courses, a third of institutions reported some blended learning. That's a mix of online and face-to-face. I think after COVID-19, there will be a huge jump. I think instructors will find that using a learning management system particularly is very useful for giving students activities and work to do. Students can do a lot of work online combined with face-to-face teaching. So I see that in, say, 10 years, we'll probably have nearly all teaching will be a combination of either hybrid and blended learning or fully online, with very little just solely face-to-face teaching. The second lesson is that quality professional support for instructors is essential. There was an interesting study done by Nadia Nafi and colleagues of Centres for Teaching and Learning. We knew beforehand that most instructors were unprepared for emergency remote learning, and many sought help from Centres for Teaching and Learning. Also, some institutions offered free online courses on how to teach online. For instance, the University of British Columbia had 9 modules on how to go online with your teaching. So there was a lot of attempts to get help and not just plunge in blindly. And there were 3 areas of support that faculty were looking for. First of all, the use of key tools like Zoom and learning management systems. How do I use this? Online course design, and that came up especially over the summer when Centres for Teaching and Learning worked very, very hard with many instructors to help them improve the course design so that best practices in online learning could be incorporated into their emergency remote learning. A lot of work was done in trying to improve online lectures, make them more interactive. Online course design is a bigger shift than just improving online lectures. It's looking at all the other things you can do online besides lectures. But also there was an attempt to make online lectures more interactive, more focused, and take advantage, for instance, of the breakout rooms that you can have in Zoom for students to do work in small groups online and then come back into the main lecture. But there were big scaling issues. As I said before, only 10% of courses were fully online, and instructional designers have been working primarily with probably 10% or less of instructors every year. Suddenly they had to provide support for 100% of the lectures. So scaling up, it wasn't that we didn't know what to tell instructors to do. We did know that from previous experience with online learning, at least in Canada. But it was getting that knowledge out to all the instructors in a very, very short period of time that was the challenge. And that's because there's no comprehensive faculty development system in place. There's no requirement in most universities for faculty to take professional development courses at least once a year, for instance. But in order to make best use of online learning, we need systematic training. Anybody who teaches online should go through at least a short course, maybe 5 to 10 hours. It's not rocket science, but there is stuff to know before you go online. So we need more online training courses on how to do online and blended learning. And particularly we want short, just-in-time open education resources, like how to create a breakout group in Zoom, a little short video on how to do that instructors can log into when they need to use it. The third lesson is we can learn from some of the things that took place in emergency remote learning. Now, I want to emphasize that in most cases, this is not what I would call quality online learning. It didn't follow the best practices that had been built up over 20 years previous experience in teaching fully online. They were often synchronous lectures. That means the students had to log in at the same time as the professor. They were often interactive. There was nothing that the students were being asked to do other than watch and listen. And quality online was really previously associated with the use of asynchronous tools such as a learning management system, where students can log in at any time and where there are a lot of activities for students built into the learning management system, which can be then monitored or even assessed by the instructors. However, the use of Zoom was increasing before COVID-19. Instructors had found it to be an easy tool to use for online learning. So there are some good things about synchronous online learning, and we're learning what that is good for. But one of the big problems was cognitive overload. We knew from research beforehand that students have a lot of problem concentrating for more than 15 or 20 minutes if they don't have an activity to do. So they need to be redesigned for active learning. We need to identify the affordances of synchronous online learning. What can it do better than if the students can just download the recording and use it whenever they want to? What are the advantages? And are we designing our synchronous Zoom lectures to take advantage of those affordances? And also identify the affordances of asynchronous, when students can go off and do activities, come back and so on. So both synchronous and asynchronous have value. My view overall is that asynchronous is going to be more important than synchronous, but we've learned from COVID-19 that there are some valuable things that we can build in terms of synchronous learning for students. Lesson 4, we need better 21st century assessment methods. There was a lot of worries about invigilating online exams. How do we do this? And in fact, I know of at least one national accreditation agency that would not accept online exams for qualifications. So what they wanted was online proctoring, which is basically getting the students to do what they would do in a classroom, but doing at home on their computer with a camera watching what they do. This was very intrusive and it led to privacy issues. One accreditation agency said that if a student leaves the room to go to the toilet, they had to take their webcam with them so they couldn't be seen cheating in the bathroom. Well, that is so intrusive and so wrong. And it's the wrong issue. It was trying to assess in the 21st century in a 19th century way of paper and pencil tests done on a computer. We need the way we change, we need to change the way we assess learning. Online learning allows students' work to be continuously tracked, and so you can have both formative and continuous assessment as students go. You as an instructor can see what the students are doing while they're doing it. Now that might be intrusive, except they're in a learning management system which is walled off from everything else, and so there should be guaranteed privacy within that group for the students when they're working. Formative assessment is better too for measuring skills development. You can look at things like communication skills and critical thinking as the students are working through the course. We can use tools such as blogs and e-portfolios and even blockchain to secure what students are doing and they can't go back and alter it for assessment purposes. So we really need to rethink the way we assess students. Online learning can provide a richer source, richer ways of measuring learning and achievement. Lesson 5, making innovative teaching stick. There were many examples of innovative teaching during COVID-19, but how far will they stick? How far will they go beyond the individual instructors and be adopted by other instructors to improve the quality of teaching? Contact North in Ontario has got an amazing project called Pockets of Innovation, where instructors report on how they've been using technology for their teaching. And there are some really interesting, innovative uses of technology amongst those examples. But few of those go beyond the individual instructor. Few go beyond the instructor to other instructors in the same department even. There are a few that have gone across not only different departments, but across different institutions and been picked up by other institutions. But generally, institutions do not have a strategy for disseminating and supporting innovative teaching. So a lot of the things that were really interesting and innovative will have probably been lost through COVID-19 because we don't have the tools. So I'm saying institutions need a strategy for encouraging innovation in teaching, rewards and recognition for instructors who do this. We know that promotion is driven primarily by research. We need to give more rewards for innovative teaching. There needs to be a strategy for disseminating good teaching within the institution through workshops, through publicity within social media within the institution, and we need to put some funding aside to encourage innovation. And innovation, incidentally, is not innovation for its own sake. It needs to be linked to key teaching goals to assess which innovations to support, so that there should be some kind of evaluation system built in when a faculty member does something innovative. There should be some ways of measuring the impact of that. And I've got a couple of examples here. One is from Simon Fraser University Biological Sciences, where an instructor used a web-based tool to develop scientific argumentation skills. And that she measured the success of that and found it to be very successful. And it's a tool that could be used across a range of science subjects. But you need an innovation strategy to make sure it gets beyond the individual instructor. Lesson 6, multimedia and open education resources are underused. Most Zoom was for content development rather than skills development. Instructors were doing the hard work. They were finding the information, organising it, making the arguments, delivering it. And students were relatively passive, absorbing this. We had few examples in emergency remote learning of the use of dynamic video, games or simulations, or other open educational resources. Mainly because instructors just didn't have time to know about them. It's not a criticism of individual instructors, it's just something we should be looking at in the future. The problem is there's often a lack of good quality, easy to use multimedia open education resources, especially outside of the English language. Most open education resources look cheap and don't look very well produced in media terms and are often text-based. Our students are used to good quality multimedia. Even YouTube videos made at home are often very good on YouTube, and we have to match those standards in education. So we need some national programs for OER development so that good quality resources can be shared across the system. A lot of material can be used from across many different institutions and courses. We don't have that great deal of varieties, particularly in the first and second year programs in post-secondary education, for instance. And give students the resources to learn. Let them go and find these resources on the net or direct them to them so that they can use these resources as well as having your lectures. Probably the most important lesson for me, that online access is still a problem for many students, even in advanced countries like Canada. Up to 25% of our students do not have adequate access to online learning. That's about 15% live in remote areas where they don't have high-speed internet access. They may have internet access, but for instance, it's not broadband enough to download a Zoom lecture, which requires at least 10 megabits. Many poor people don't have either the access because they can't afford the internet, or they don't have the hardware that's required, or there's only enough hardware for one in the household, and when one may be working from home and two may be studying, for instance. And so there's often crowded accommodation and multiple users of devices that can be a problem unless you have really high-speed internet access into the home. So for a lot of people, normally online learning has been used to increase access. It's for students who couldn't get to campus. But we found through COVID-19 that there were students who had access to campus but didn't have access to the internet. So we need to focus on low bandwidth tools like learning management systems and email rather than on high bandwidth tools like Zoom. We need to improve internet coverage now. Canada, for instance, has a plan for covering the remote north, but it's not going to be implemented for another 10 years. That's not good enough. We need to get that money out and those systems put in place now. We need more local technology support centres. Contact North was able to support a lot of students in remote regions because they already had support centres in small communities where students could go in and have a voluntary counsellor to advise them what courses to take, but also they had decent internet access that they could use. And we should give priority to the poor, particularly in the K-12 sector, for on-campus teaching. So if we have to spread out students during a pandemic, it should be the ones that don't have access to the internet who should be given priority to come onto campus and do the rest of the teaching online. Lesson 8, we need more flexible learning spaces on campus. I've already mentioned that home is not always the best place for many students to learn. Blended learning requires the integration of classrooms and online learning. Students need to bring their work and be able to demonstrate it in class, the work that they've done online. And we need more informal spaces on campus where students can go to a quiet area and study quietly on their own. Many libraries have those spaces, but we need them scattered all over a large campus, for instance, where students can have easy access to them. And I'm wondering what we're going to do with these large lecture classes even after COVID-19. We realise now that putting 200 people or more in a room for an hour is not a good idea when there are viruses running around the community. Even if COVID-19 goes away, we're going to have the flu and so on. So maybe we need to look at how we design smaller classroom spaces and how we can use that for interactive learning. And some institutions were already before COVID-19 designing interactive technology-rich classrooms where students can sit around small tables where they can plug in their computers. Each table has a screen around the room and the instructor has their own console where they can also put things up on all the screens if they wish. And also breakout rooms where students can go and do some work on their own and come back into the group, for instance. So I think we're going to need some thought given to campus spaces, and particularly if we go to blended learning, do we need to build new big lecture halls in the future if, say, 25 to 30 to 40% of all teaching is going to be done online, even in campus-based institutions? So every institute, lesson 9, is for administrators, because a lot of these issues go beyond the ability of individual instructors to resolve. Every institution needs an overall digital learning strategy. Where are we going to be in 5 years' time? What will our teaching look like? Every academic program as well as the institution really should be looking at its teaching and how it's going to be delivered over the next 5 years. We also found that during COVID-19, advanced planning works. Those institutions that assumed that in May, that they would have to go online in September, even though the COVID-19 rates were coming down, did much better in September in terms of student reporting, instructors reporting on how things went well in September. The ones who left their planning for September to August did much worse, and that came out clearly from the research. Now, COVID-19 is going to go away, but we're going to have other things like bad weather that could close down campuses. We're going to have other flu viruses and other probably health problems that may require campuses to close. So you need a plan so that you can be resilient and move easily from face-to-face to online and back again. The other lesson that came out clearly that Centres for Teaching and Learning were critical in this move to successful online learning. They need to be strengthened and fully supported. However, there's a limit to how far you can increase the numbers of people working in Centres for Teaching and Learning. We can't afford to have an instructional designer and a web designer working with every faculty member. We need to put in place training systems for faculty so that they don't need so much support, and we can use the Centres for Teaching and Learning to create templates and models and resources that faculty can draw on. And I wonder about the end of the large lecture class. This is, in my view, not a good way to teach anyway. It's not a healthy way to teach. So do we need these large lecture classes? Can we find another way of organising those big first-year classes so that they're more interactive and students are learning in a safer environment? And lastly, lesson 10, we need more data and more research. Radical changes are taking place. Well, maybe not. Maybe it's all going to go back to what it was before. But unless we measure it, we won't know. We need to know what proportion of teaching is fully online. That's easier to measure, actually. What we don't know is what types of blended learning are being implemented. There are many different ways of doing blended learning. That's usually an individual instructor choice, and it's much harder to track that. But we need to track it. We need to know what forms of blended learning work and which were unsuccessful. And we need to know what the institutional plans are for digital learning and what's worked and what hasn't. The Canadian Digital Learning Research Association, before COVID-19, was tracking some of these questions, but it means institutions putting in place much more rigorous data collection about what they're doing and what form their teaching is taking. So we need to know before and after COVID-19, are the learning outcomes better as a result? Who benefited and who lost as a result of the move to emergency remote learning? Who's going to collect this data? We have institutional research departments that do that internally, but who's going to collect it nationally? Canadian Digital Learning Research Association is a non-profit organisation, and its funding is very tenuous. We need regular national and statewide information to learn from each other so we can see the big picture. And in these two diagrams, you can see how the University of Ottawa tracked its growth in blended learning. It put its plan in several years ago, and it's been monitoring how well that plan has rolled out. And this is a really useful tool for them that shows how many instructors have been trained, for instance. It gives them an idea of what they still have to do, and it also indicates how successful their online learning strategy and blended learning strategy has been. So in conclusion, never waste a good crisis. COVID-19 was an unprecedented opportunity to improve the quality of teaching and learning by building on the changes occurring as a result of COVID-19. We've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. What we need is a new normal where our institutions are stronger, better and more resilient as a result of the painful experience of COVID-19. To wrap up, there are some questions you can use if you wish to for general discussion. You can contact me there. That's my website, and you can see more keynotes in this area by going to the Cole YouTube channel. And that's a free online book that I've written that covers a lot of these issues, even though it's written pre-COVID-19. It's a free open textbook. It's available over the internet, and you can download it whenever you want. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Dr. Tony Bates, for sending us a well-prepared and a very informative recorded video. So I think this provided the participants with a deep insight on the aspects of teaching and learning in a post-pandemic time. So with that, now we would like to move on to the Q&A session. And I think the two presentations we had has set the stage for a very interesting Q&A session. So now I would like to invite the panelists for the Q&A session. First, I would like to invite Professor Tony Bates, who is the Senior Advisor from the G. Raymond Chang School of Continuing Education, Ryerson University, Canada. And then I would like to invite Professor Chalinda Benaragama, the Director of the Staff Development Center, University of Peradeniya. Then I would like to invite Professor Roshan Ragel, who's the consultant of the LEARN or the Lanka Education and Research Network Sri Lanka. And he is the professor at the Department of Computer Engineering from the Faculty of Engineering, University of Peradeniya. And we also have two eminent resource persons. First, I would like to invite Dr. Nanda Gunawardhana, the Director of the Research and International Relations, Sri Lanka Technological Campus, SLTC. And also we have Dr. Malitha Wijesundara, who's the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Sciences, Sri Lanka Institute of Information and Technology. So it's so nice to see all of you. So with that, I would like to invite again Professor Roshan Ragel, who will moderate the panel discussion of the Q&A session from this point onwards. So over to you, Professor Roshan.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Tony, and thank you for everyone joining. And let's start this panel discussion by giving a perspective of what has happened in the past for the last year or so in Sri Lanka. And then I'll go into the questions, and we'll also invite the participants to ask questions. So let me just quickly share my screen and show a little statistics on what has happened in Sri Lanka. I have access to some data from let me share. So there's some data on the number of Zoom meetings that has happened during this period and for the last 1 year actually, even before the pandemic and during. And this data is coming from a centralized Zoom platform where all higher education institutions are hosting their meetings. So the numbers are coming from that, and I'm showing numbers from the sessions that are conducted, which are shown in black line, and also the red line is showing the number of participants joined every month, starting from January 2020 up to 2021. So as you can see, the numbers in fact, like when we started, when the pandemic started and the lockdown started in Sri Lanka, all the higher education institutions, the state and non-state, all of them started online within a week or 10 days or so. And they tried reaching out to students and making them available and so on. And during the time, as you can see, the numbers have increased up to July, and then August, September, we have gone down, meaning like we opened up our campuses to some extent and allow students to come in because we realized at that point that our lockdown was successful, and then we brought them in. And then we had our second wave in October, and again we have gone online. And you can, from the graph, you also can see the rate at which the adaptation happening, how fast the students joining or the classes happening. On the second phase is really fast. We have just picked up in a month or even less to the maximum, and the highest number of participations and meetings we observed somewhere in November last year, and then on they are sort of stable. We are hitting about in a month, we are hitting about 3 million students and teachers, 3 to 4 million students and teachers joining in our platform now. And we are again now trying to open up things and bring students to physical classes. But so this is how the current status on all higher education institutions who are on this centralized learning platform or the online meeting platform, where mostly the lectures and classes and also meetings are. So that is just to give a perspective from Sri Lanka and overall higher education institution, how it works. And just to add some comparison. So you can see like at peak compared to just when we started at peak, we have serving about 6,000 times more number of participants. So I will not go into every detail because the panelists are there, they'll answer and go in deep into this discussion. But just to give a perspective of Sri Lanka, we have tried, and also at the peak time of the meetings, which are in the morning times on a working day, let's say a time like this, we have about 60 to 70% of students concurrently connected. When I say students, I'm talking about higher education institution students, which are about, we have state universities, which are about 125,000 students, and also we have others. So it's about 200,000 students who are there, and out of which about 60 to 70% are connected, or about 70% are connected at our peak time. So that's just to give some perspective on how the synchronous online activities are happening now in Sri Lanka. With that perspective, I'll move on to the questions, the more interesting part. We have a resourceful panelist, and I'll start my question with Tony, who did the presentation. Thank you for that wonderful presentation, Tony, and also the details and the thoughtful questions you have put out. I'll start asking a question from you. So the question I'm going to ask you is about hybrid learning. So you mentioned in one of those points about hybrid learning. Can you give a little more perspective into hybrid learning and how it's going to be the future? Hybrid learning, so blended we understand, so the blend was already there, and how blended is going to be in the future, we understand to some extent. But hybrid, what do you see? How do you see it in the future? Can you give some perspective? Thank you.
That's a good question, Roshan. The problem with, we have a big problem with definitions at the moment, because partly it's dynamic. People are finding new ways to combine online and face-to-face all the time. And secondly, people use the same term to mean different things as a result. So, and I see basically a continuum. Most teaching is in some way blended. Very little teaching now has no technology. You have overhead projectors, you have various devices in the classroom to help the instructor, but they're more like classroom aids, and I wouldn't really call that hybrid learning, certainly. For me, hybrid learning is when you deliberately design the face-to-face teaching and the online learning so that you get the best out of both. In other words, you get students to go off and do work online, and you set work online that they can do on their own or even together, but online. And then you save the face-to-face, the classroom, for the things that they can't do so easily online. The obvious example of this is science teaching, where students can do a lot of the theory. They can do a lot of preparation before they come into a lab, but they have to do the lab work. And then to make better use of the lab, you might want them to do the write-up afterwards and do that online. And then maybe come back into class or come back into the lab afterwards for a debriefing with the instructor. So in that way, you have thought very carefully about what you do face-to-face and what you do online. HyFlex is almost the opposite. It's where you can do, the student can choose exactly how they want to study, but there's a lot of duplication then. So students can do it face-to-face, they can do or the material is put online, but often it's the same lecture that they would have got if they come in face to face. And it doesn't necessarily make best use of the face-to-face and online environments. So it's really difficult because we're finding there's flipped classroom where professors record their lecture and the students look at that first and then come into class for discussion afterwards, for instance. So that's another definition of blended. So I think it's a design issue in the end. How do you design a course so that you make the best use of the campus experience plus the best use of the asynchronous learning that students can do and research that you can do online? They don't have to be in class to do that. So it's a design issue for me.
Thank you. I have one question from an audience on to Tony. Shall I ask it or will you be able to read? If I may, shall I read it for you?
Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. So the question is coming from Ratnayaka, and thanks a lot for the insight, Mr. Bade, Dr. Bade. Can I know what was the general perception, opinion of the students on online teaching? Except the infrastructure issue, were they happy given the fact that they were lost the personal touch on the face-to-face?
Some were and some weren't. The majority were not happy, certainly not in Canada. The younger the student, the less happy they were. For students in maybe their third year of university, of undergraduate, you know, they knew what they were doing. They could study online. They were confident in their own ability to learn. But the students, particularly the students who were coming out of high school and were wanting the campus experience of going to the bars, meeting new people, it was that sense of community that they got from coming on campus that they missed most. And they also found it hard to concentrate, particularly with long lectures online. You have to remember that these students are not studying with other students when they're online. They're on their own, and they have nobody they can pass a note to or have a joke with, and so on. So they found that part very, very difficult. Now, the student experience changed over time, though. Initially, they were very, very grateful that they could still do the course online. So the first 2 or 3 weeks, they were very tolerant. And then as it got on, it got more and more, they went on, they got more and more unhappy. And then the teaching started to improve because there was some feedback coming back to the professors and they started making their lectures more interactive. So the satisfaction rate started to go up again. So it's about, at the moment, it's about, it varies from place to place, but it's around about 10 to 15% less student satisfaction with online learning at the moment than with the face-to-face situation. Now, having said that, there are some students who really like this. They found that the flexibility of studying online and being in control really suited them. And there is some generalizations about introverts like online learning and extroverts like the campus and so on. Not quite sure it's as simple as that, but certainly there are individual preferences. And certainly for many students who are working part-time, they really appreciated the online. If they could still keep working during COVID-19, they really appreciated the flexibility of the online element, particularly if the lectures were recorded and streamed rather than live. That made a big difference to students.
Thank you, Tony. So that's like you have gone into some psychological insights, like how the perspective changed. So at the beginning they were desperate, so they wanted to have classes, and then when you start going and they realize, okay, there's a change. This is not the usual classes, and therefore there are problems. And then how the teachers adapt to it and improve.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What we don't know yet is what the learning loss, if any, has been. You know, we've only got their subjective experience at the moment, and it will take a year or two before we really know if there's been some serious learning loss. I'd be very surprised if there isn't. And people say, oh, well, that's the fault of online learning, but it's not. It's the fault of the pandemic. You know, we weren't doing online learning the way we wanted to because we didn't have time to do it. So I think that there are some issues around the quality of the experience for many students. And I think it is getting better as well. I think that's the good news. And so I think, you know, faculty have learned as much as, if not more than the students have in this period.
That's some interesting insight. Thank you, Tony, for that. And let me move on to Malitha now. Malitha is Dean from the SLIIT. Thank you, Malitha, for joining. And I have a question related to the blended flip classroom setup at SLIIT from you. So first, can you tell us from SLIIT perspective, how do you see flipped classroom and traditional classes, how they are different and how you adapted to that sort of setup?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. Can I share some slides? Okay. So to start with, actually, at SLIIT, we had video-based platform that was used to record classroom activities and put on a portal like YouTube, which was private to our university. And so when the pandemic started, we actually modified it so that lecturers could record on their own and upload to this platform. So in a way, this is very similar to flipped concept, because at the beginning we didn't have Zoom in place and we only had these recorded lectures. So in flipped learning, it's actually flipping the group learning scenario in the classroom and the individual learning that happens at home on your own, basically to study at home and then have group activities based on what you studied, the content that you went through collaboratively. So of course you couldn't come to the class, so it means doing it online, like through Zoom or some platform like that. So it is the normal, if you think of a normal classroom, we deliver the content as educators so that the students would absorb the content in the classroom. But here the content is delivered to them and they absorb the content on their own, at their own pace. They could stop, rewind, relook at it whenever they want. So there is an advantage there. But the classroom or the collaborative online space is then used to discuss and do some activities, group activities or presentations based on that. So this is the concept of flip. So I guess it is in a way a hybrid mode as well, because you have some individual studying and group studying. So in flip, before the class, you go through the content. So this remembering content or absorbing content happens before the class. So what we can then do is we can try to use the content, the knowledge that you absorbed, into apply and analyze kind of activities during the class, and maybe after the class you can get them to evaluate and create, so that you can actually use the available time slots, available opportunities better, because in a way absorbing can happen at different paces depending on the student. I mean, there are so many positives and also negatives in this, because the classroom can cater to different students with different learning speeds or learning abilities. They can learn on their own. They can spend more time absorbing. If they are slow to absorb, maybe if they find some area difficult, they can take longer to absorb. So ability to rewind was appreciated by many. Ability to pause, take a break, because you can't, as Tony said, listen to an online lecture for very long. So you have to have a break. And in a classroom, we can't be giving that kind of breaks because we don't have the time to give such breaks in between. So you can stop, rewind, and watch again. So once you know the content, the interaction between the students could be based on the content. So, so that is a positive. And also, it allows real differentiated learning. That is, you have your own learning experience because you study on your own, but then you contribute to a group discussion. So I think then you feel good about yourself because you taught, or you gave an idea to the class or to the peers. So that way the learning experience become better. And also there are four pillars of FLIP. So I will just very quickly mention. It's the flexible environment. This is the group learning to individual learning. So the spaces have to be different for these two activities. So you have to cater to the requirement of the different environments for the different activities. And also the learning culture has to change. You have to give more opportunities for the students to participate in the classroom activities and support them or scaffold them through the knowledge building. And also the content has to be very intentionally created. It's not yet another classroom lecture that we record. It has to be intentionally created. You have to guide the student through the concepts, highlight the important ones, and so on. And also, as educators, I think we need to be professional, be reflective, so that we can improve what we do. And I mean, in any change, what we have to do is to plan. So in here, plan the lesson and then record. So you have to make an intentional recording based on your plan, and then share it. So we can share it through an LMS, as Tony said. And then once you have delivered, then you have to probably look at how the students have looked at it. Have they gone through it fully, or are they looking at a certain point many times? So we have to look at the analytics, and then we have to group and discuss, separate the students into groups and have an interaction, or make them present something, and then basically regroup and come back to the class and discuss what they have come up with. So if you do this is the way to implement FLIP. I think you can repeat this if it works well and improve in a cyclic manner. So at SLIIT, we had the pandemic on, I think the lockdown started on in March around 14th, and on 18th itself, we changed our system to cater to educators from home. so that their lectures could be uploaded. And we had 8,000 views on the first day itself. And you can see these refer to semesters, these large chunks. And this is the semester break. And this is the second semester. And in between, actually, we opened the campus for a while and then closed again. So these high peaks are related to the exams. So just before exams, they seem to use the recorded content very much. Overall, among the 2 semesters, we had nearly 2 million views and 900, close to 900 terabytes of video downloads. So the students still appreciate the recorded content. Sometimes now it's the recorded version of the Zoom class that they have on this. But actually, in our survey, the students appreciated the purpose recorded content rather than Zoom recorded lectures. That's because they think the purposely designed content is much more effective in delivering the real value or the real content. So that's the kind of summary from SLIIT about the flipped classroom concept.
Thank you, Malitha, for that intro and also the details into what how SLIIT has done it. And you have mostly used video recorded sort of a platform compared to synchronous one. Can you give a little more insight, like how do you
yes, the pandemic started about 5 weeks into the first semester, and the balance 10 weeks of that semester we did recorded lectures, and we didn't have Zoom implemented across the campus. So those lectures were purposely recorded. Whereas in the second semester, we had Zoom implemented. So these recordings were actually recorded Zoom lectures. So they were actually done, interactively online with the students, but the recording was uploaded to the system. So the 2 semesters have 2 different types of lectures.
How do you compare? Like, do you have any?
Well, the students actually like the purposely recorded versions because they said they actually waste little time because when you are interacting with the students, you spend some time, trying to see whether they grasp, and you spend more time about the real idea. But in the recorded version, you really deliver the core content. And in a revision, when you prepare for an exam, they think that core content matters. So that's why they appreciate it.
Very objective set of students. Yes. Thank you, Malitha. And I'll now move on to Dr. Nanda Gunawardhana. Nanda, hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Thank you for joining. And Nanda is from SLTC. Nanda, I'll directly dive into the questions. In SLTC, I understand that you have implemented online activities in the last 2 semesters and successfully conducted exams as well. What do you see as the barriers in delivering this online classes and also exams compared to the physical one?
Yeah, thanks, Roshan. I think Tony and Chalinda set the platform nicely, so I can customize it to Sri Lankan context. So first thing is I have to mention there are no perfect solutions. As Tony correctly pointed out, there are no perfect solutions even for the physical delivery and for the online delivery. So we all have to understand that. So I have to mention that, as you mentioned, we started the 3rd semester in last week after completing, successfully completing 2 full semesters. I want to stress that the word completed 2 full semesters. Okay. So when we started this conversion from physical to online, as Malitha mentioned, so we start immediately. So when pandemic hit Sri Lanka in latter part of March, next week we started online delivery. So you asked the question about the barriers, right? Barriers. As Tony mentioned, the first barrier is the mindset of 3 different groups. First, staff members. Second, non-academic staff members. Third, student. So there are some kind of resistance of staff members initially. I should say about 10 to 15% staff members, those who don't like online delivery, they resist. So if somebody resists, what you have to do is you have to have a good policy in the institution. So we develop a policy first. Okay. Then after developing the policy, we ask all staff members to implement the policy. That was our approach. So then I have to mention that another 15 to 20% of our staff members, especially those who are coming from engineering background and IT background, they are really happy about the online delivery and the implementation of online lectures and so on. So there are some people they don't like, there are some people who really like. The other staff members in SLTC, they don't either like or dislike, we don't know. But once we have a policy, they are obliged to implement the policy, right? So another reason is in Sri Lankan context, you cannot satisfy everybody. So we have to understand, I should be very honest, okay? So those who don't like the online thing, they will come up with 101 reason not to do online. So then they will tell everything, every possible thing. You don't have policy, you don't have accreditation, you don't have practicals and so on, right? So as I mentioned, you cannot have a perfect solution. So we understood that. Then the second one, actually convincing non-academic staff members and students, right? So we had a very straightforward policy for non-academic staff members. We enhance, we double our IT team and provide all facilities to library team and convert our physical library to online library. So now we have a very good collection of books, digital books, so student can use that. So that is the second step. Third step, convincing student. So we are a private university, we don't have a lot of problem like government universities, I have to be very frank. So once we have a policy, we inform to student and we inform to their parents. So our president personally took a couple of meetings with the students and their parents and stress one point, only one point. That is we have 2 choices. We can close the university and you have to wait another 1 year after pandemic. So you will lose 1 year. The second option, we will run the university, then you don't waste 1 year. So that is the message our president conveyed to parents and staff members. So all staff members and students agree to that message. So once we have that kind of thing, we don't have any big problem. Then we had a steering committee. Then I was asked to chair the steering committee meeting. Then all heads were in steering committee. Once a week we met and took a decision to implement the policy, right? So then we had a very nice document for the policy document. Then we have identified 10 key areas to implement the online delivery. Once we have a policy document, we present that policy document to UGC and ministry and get their approval to implement that. So we are a private university, remember, so we have to get approval in certain extent from UGC and ministry. So once we get the approval, so we can deliver the program. Next important thing is conducting lectures. That is one thing. The second thing is conducting examination. That is the hardest part. So some people just conduct lectures without completing the semester, right? Then from the beginning, we have to understand that will create a lot of mess. So you have to conduct lectures and complete the semester by conducting examination. So then there are so many concerns, others. How to conduct exam, how to prepare exam papers, how to have a good IT facilities, how to evaluate. There are so many things. So what we have done is we arrange a series of workshops to train our examination department and our academic staff members, even for how to prepare a paper. As Chalinda mentioned, so you have to address to the different cognitive level in this particular stage. Some staff members, they don't know, actually, frankly speaking, they don't know how to prepare an examination paper. Some staff members prepare some kind of paper. Some students can copy even from Wikipedia and other places. But most of the students, they are very smart staff members. They prepared a very good examination paper, then moderated by some staff members to address the high cognitive level of the high cognitive level. So in doing so, we evaluate the lot of problems. Then the third thing, I think, as everybody mentioned, proper plan. Planning is very important. As you know, failing to plan is planning to fail, definitely. So planning is critical. So we plan even beginning of the semester, right? So that is also very important. Then change, as very clearly mentioned, change is very different for students. So we started the mentoring system. Almost every student got personal attention from staff members. We divide because we have very small numbers compared to other private universities. As Malitha mentioned, they have big numbers, but SLTC, we have very small numbers, but we have staff members. So we divided all students to different staff members and arranged a mentoring session and identified their problems. Some students actually, they have genuine concern, problems like internet facilities and all this stuff. So we have separate mobile number and also hotline number and allocated separate staff members to address those type of questions. Okay. Now once you complete all this stuff, I think you can conduct one full semester. Once again, now you might ask question, especially if you are from engineering background, right? So like civil engineering, electronic, electrical, the practicals, that is one of the most important aspects, especially in engineering faculty. But we don't have that problem in other faculties, IT and management, the music, they don't have a lot of problems because they have small numbers, they conduct practicals. For engineering, yes, we have some small problem about practicals. So we introduce simulations, digital labs, and so on. As you mentioned, August and September, we have like a break, right? So we ask students to come and complete their project work during that time. So those are the things actually, we took in SLTC. I always believe, Roshan, staff members are smarter than students. Staff members are smarter than students. If staff members are smarter than students, they can prepare a nice paper, right? Then student cannot copy. Now you have so many digital tools, right? Even you can have multiple choice questions in different ways. You can arrange different type of questions. Then we talked to different guys from Deakin University, then RMIT, then Lancaster, and got their advice. Then they got their experience. This is the first time for Sri Lanka, but there are so many other international universities, international institutions conduct this program. That is not very new. So we can get their experience, how to actually prepare a question, good question. That is also good thing, right? To learn from those who have conduct that kind of examination. So we have learned from them. Even with the Deakin University, we have like once a week, we had a meeting with them and learn from them. So if our staff members are smarter than students, you can prepare a nice question paper. Then you can mitigate. I am not going to tell 100%. You can mitigate most of the problem. In that way only you can conduct a full semester. So as I mentioned, this is the third semester we start last week. So we are going to complete this semester. First semester we got a bad experience, little bit bad experience, copying and everything. Then we introduced the second semester proctoring tool. With the proctoring tool, you can monitor everything. So basically you can monitor everything. Then you incorporate plagiarism tool. To that software, so you can minimize most of. Yeah, Roshan.
Thank you. There's also a question because you were talking about exams and all these tools, and also there's one question from the audience, so I can ask that as well. You have answered it to some extent, but given that the audience has asked it, I'll directly ask, so you can give another perspective quickly, and then we can move on. So Rajitha Ranasinghe, he's asking, what are the methods for successful ways of conducting online exams? From my colleagues at the State University, he's saying like it's sort of it's not very successful and not very good. So
Yeah.
what are the methods and challenges?
Yeah. One of the main challenge, I will tell the challenges and the solutions, right? Challenges are, number one, internet facility for students. Some students complain that they don't have a good internet connection. So what we can do, right? The solution is we open a lab. We have computer lab with computers. For those who don't have good internet connection, those who don't have good laptop and all these facilities, we arrange a separate lab, separate session for them. Do you believe this stat? Okay, so we told them, then there are a lot of things. So around 20% of students, they told we don't have a good internet connection, we don't have a laptop. Okay, we told it's okay, we will arrange everything, don't worry. You inform to the registrar's office, and we divide the student into first year, second year, third year, and fourth year. So we have different badges. We can follow the health regulation with the health guideline. We have separate person to do that. Allocate hostel. You come to hostel, we will give us online examination, because otherwise it's not fair. Online examination for everybody. You come, we will arrange laptop. Then we get the numbers. Can you guess the number? 0.
Yeah.
0. 0. The thing is, they found computers from their friends, relatives, and everybody. They don't want to come and write in front of staff members, right? That is number one. Okay, 0. The second one, actually arranging the examination, how to set the question paper. Okay, especially engineering, it's okay. You have calculations and all this stuff. For management, like economics and all this stuff, descriptive question papers. So we train these staff members for different sessions. We are in different sessions and train them how to prepare a good question. That is very important, right? Even for economics, lot of calculations, right? So you can do that. That is the second thing. Third thing, you have to have a very good proctoring tool to monitor a student. So once you have a webcam and computer, so we got 0 from student, right? So everybody got the computer and a good camera. So we have a proctoring tool to monitor everybody. So if somebody cut and paste from Wikipedia, it was implemented not in the first semester. Second semester we found that, okay, student cheat and everything. No, we have a proctoring tool. If you cut and paste, proctoring tool detect that one. It's not a typing speed. It's a different thing, right? Proctoring tool inform. We are not going to tell everything to students. Later on, I can share most of the things with teachers only. You can monitor everything. So we have a separate section to monitor the examination with so many computers. So they monitor all these things. Then they inform to the relevant authority who conduct the examination. So we can catch student. Okay. So student cannot play with proper proctoring tool. So once you have a proper proctoring tool, you can identify almost everything. The fourth one is plagiarism. Okay, plagiarism. So you incorporated proctoring tool with the plagiarism tool. Then you don't have any problem. So you can mitigate most of the problem. I'm once again, I'm not telling we mitigate 100%. We mitigate in the second semester. First semester we had some problem. We gave severe punishment. That is also very important. Those who copy, those who violate examination rule, we change the bylaws and give punishment. So one student, especially computer head, I'm not going to tell his name, he is very critical about that, punishment to everybody. Okay. So other staff members also, once student realize we are getting penalized, nobody want to do unnecessary stuff. So staff are always smarter than students. Please believe me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nanda, for that insight. I mean, it was very insightful and also encouraging. So others also can take steps to follow. And I will now move on to Chalinda Benaragama. I have a few questions for you as well. You are the Director, Staff Development Center at Peradeniya. And so I'll start with your experience at Peradeniya. So give us some perspective at what's happening at Peradeniya related to online teaching, learning, and assessment.
Yes. Actually, when we faced this challenge for the first time somewhere in March or in April, we thought of doing something. At that time, actually, to me, honestly, it was something new. And I knew there were some members within this university who has been doing a lot of blended learning, flipped classrooms, even online assessments, even well before the pandemic. So what I did was I got some members together. Actually, I would say some of my friends together. And then we started offering online training programs for the university. We just thought of doing it as a trial. To tell you the numbers, we six members from different faculties of from University of Peradeniya. We got together, we discussed several things, and we prepared an outline. And for the first time, we started offering, as I remember, somewhere in June last year. And it was a very successful event, and we received a lot of feedback. And as I remember, for the first online webinar that we did on online teaching and learning as a training program for academic staff at University of Peradeniya, there was something like 180 participants online. And then again, some of the members requested to have the second go of the same program, which we did once again. And for that also, there were something like 150, as I remember. So we got to know that there's a huge demand for training because it's something new to everybody. Personally, I wanted to improve myself. So what I did was I took part in 2 online training sessions offered through Coursera. And then I became kind of little confident about the online teaching and learning. Then what I did was I started sharing my experience. So this was the beginning of the SLTC Staff Development Center's contribution to this online teaching and learning related training offering in University of Peradeniya. And just after 2 programs offered in Peradeniya, it went around the country. And then there was a demand created for these online training. And I'm very happy to say many resource persons from University of Peradeniya took part in all these training programs, not limited to the state universities, even offering the services to non-state universities in the country. So now looks like even very recently, I saw some members who were there in those training programs now serving as resource persons in some other training programs. So this is something that we need to do. We need to improve everybody. We need to get everybody on board. And then if we can make many resource persons within the country, surely this online teaching learning will be a very simple thing to everybody, to all of us.
Thank you for that, Chalinda. Just to extend on it, like you yourself, you have mentioned, you have done some training to yourself online and then made use of that opportunity. So how do you, so you are, as I understand, is also an advocate for technology-based delivery yourself. So how do you see the future? How do you see the future of the country? You have the setup you see, like how do you see, how is it going to be? Your take?
I personally would take this as a great opportunity for me to improve my teaching and learning. And that's what I have experienced with my own students. Believe me, I have conducted almost like, I can't remember exact numbers, but something like 14 or 15 full day training programs online, because I got to know many members saying the students are not very live online, so very difficult to have more than 2 hours or something. But I just tried it for my experience and got the feedback from the students as well. So if we look at the pedagogy related aspects, surely we can do a better job, even online. So I see a huge potential, even when the students get back to the universities on ground. There's a huge potential for us to remove some of the parts that we have been offering in the class, because we have that mindset of content delivering in the classroom, for which I personally don't like. Now, because we easily, that's my personal opinion, right? Of course, you cannot remove the content delivery totally, but rather than doing that, For example, the narrated PowerPoint presentations or the recorded Zoom lectures, you can put online. That's okay. So the students will watch all these things and get back to the class, and then we have enough time to do a lot of activities with the students, targeting the real learner-centered teaching and learning activities. So I believe even when the pandemic is gone from the society, we can capitalize on these beautiful online teaching learning activities. I see this as something that we have a huge potential for the future. So I have a big hope on this.
Thank you, Chalinda. Thank you for that. Yes, like so that with that note, particularly on, although yes, we have all these tools for doing various aspects, starting from teaching, learning, flipped classrooms, exams, all that we have enough tools. But Chalinda made a point towards the end. So pedagogy first. So we should keep that in mind in every aspect of it, and we should make sure that we look at the learning experience, the first most important one, and how that can be achieved through the right pedagogy, and all the discussions we had today is diverging towards that point. And let's take this opportunity. I take this opportunity to thank the esteemed panel members for being with us and discussing you on sharing your experience. And I'll take leave at this point as the panel moderator, and I'll hand over the stage to the organizers. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
So thank you a lot, Professor Ragel and all our panelists. It was an interesting Q&A session following the presentation. So without much ado, now I would like to invite Professor Shameen Jinadasa, the Director of the International Relations Office, to make the concluding and the vote of thanks for this program. Over to you, Professor Shameen.
Thank you, Roshan. So we had a very good session today on online teaching and learning, and there were two very good presentations and also a panel discussion by several eminent academics. So without taking much time, because we have taken additional time for the program, I would like to thank, starting from our Dr. Chalinda Benaragama, the Director, Staff Development, who was with me joining the hands with the International Relations Office to share the experience on the online teaching and learning from the COVID-19 experience, especially nationally and internationally. So we are planning to have a few more workshops to bring the experience from the other countries like Asian countries, European countries, and other the continents. Dr. Tony Bates, he has given a very good presentation, and he was late night. He has joined with us for the program. Very much appreciate his contribution and support. And Professor Roshan Ragel, who's moderated in the today's session and spending a lot of time on preparing this for the program and supporting, and he was the key person on our university on this online education. And Dr. Malitha Wijesundara and Dr. Nanda Gunawardhana, who also were good friends of us for a longer time, working with us from the SLIIT and SLTC. I would like to thank your support and participation and sharing your experiences. And the university administration, especially the Dean Engineering, providing all the logistic and support for the program, non-academic staff at the faculty, engineering faculty and the university, especially the staff from the International Relations Office, the Ms. Roshan and Ms. Kalhari, who were involved with us the program today to conduct and given all the support. So I would like to thank all the participants today. Without you, we would not have to be in to conduct this kind of session. So very much appreciate your support and comments. And we will be meeting again with the next session. Most likely it will be on next month that we are planning for the next one from the getting more international experts and sharing the session. And it's basically, and most important thing is to plan for the future, learning from the past and how we should plan for the future from this online teaching and learning experience. So thank you very much. Over to you, Roshan.
So thank you, sir, for your comments. So I would like to quickly thank all the participants for reserving your valuable time for this program. So until we meet next time, take care and goodbye. Thank you.